A Just Us Lesbians production. You know those moments that make you stop and go, wait, is this real life? Is this really happening? Well, I've had my fair share of those pinch me moments, and I'd like to share some of those if you don't mind. Like when I was younger and I was really into theater, I wrote and directed a little school play that somehow snagged the best playwright and the best director award. I was so happy. I was beyond ecstatic and I was so proud. I mean, I know it's just a school thing, but that's still a really good pinch me moment. And then it happened again a few years ago when I was honored with a Women's Night of Inspiration Award by a local community group here in San Antonio. And not only did I get to accept that award, but I got to share the stage with two incredible women, Judge Rosie Speedlin Gonzalez, a trailblazing advocate for justice and equality, and Renee Watson, the powerhouse director of small business and entrepreneurship here in Bexar County. That was another pinch me moment, and I was so grateful for it. And then this podcast. Yes, this Taco Stand podcast. Thanks to your votes, it was named the best podcast by SA Current's Best of San Antonio's Reader's Choice, which honestly, it still blows my mind. Talk about another pinch me moment. But today is a whole new level of surreal because we have the absolute honor of sitting down with Gina Ortiz Jones, a fierce, inspiring, trailblazing lesbian icon in San Antonio, who's now running for mayor. Raised in San Antonio by a single mother, Gina Ortiz Jones knows firsthand the power of hard work, resilience, and service. She earned an Air Force ROTC scholarship to Boston University and went on to serve as an intelligence officer, deploying to Iraq before advising on military operations in Latin America and Africa. She later worked in the executive office of the president, shaping policies at the intersection of economic and national security. In 2021, she made history as the first woman of color and openly lesbian Undersecretary of the Air Force, where she was awarded the Department of Defense Medal for Distinguished Public Service. Y'all, that's the highest civilian honor the department can give. And now she's back home. She's ready to bring her leadership to San Antonio. And I cannot wait for you to hear her story and her vision for our city. So buckle up, friends, because this is going to be good. All right, Gina Ortiz Jones. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
This is amazing. We've been wanting to do this for quite some time, and I think now is the perfect time to get you here at the Taco Stand podcast. So honored to have you here. As you say in your tagline, which is my favorite, no time to waste.
There's no time to waste.
We're going to go and dive right in.
Okay.
And we wanted to hear more about the personal side of you before we move on to your public service, your political background.
Sure.
So why don't we start with your love for San Antonio? Let's start there.
This is my home. You know, I mean, I think whenever people think about where they're going to do and what they're going to do with their life, right? I always think about the opportunities that allowed me to grow up healthy, get an education, and serve our country. Really, though, my story starts over 40 years ago when my mom came to this country, right? So my mom came to this country as a domestic helper. She was in the Philippines. She already went to the #1 university in the Philippines, UP Diliman.
Yeah, awesome.
She already had her graduate degree. She was already teaching. But there was an opportunity to come here, and she wanted her chance at the American dream, right? And
Absolutely.
it as a domestic helper. And she, even she's like, even if I go there in that capacity, if I'm willing to work hard,
Yeah.
the sky's the limit. And that is, that is the cloth that I am cut from. You bet on yourself, you work hard,
Yeah.
and you take advantage of opportunities, and you certainly don't forget where you come from, right?
Yeah.
So I'm very thankful that my mom had the courage to do that, right? Kind of chase her dream. And she reminded my sister and I, who she raised by herself, she reminded us that we were very lucky. We weren't smart. We were lucky to have been born here, and we'd have to give back to a country that gave us so much. I think about my mom's story. I also, as I got older, I would come to find out that my uncle was part of the Steward program. And this is a special relationship that the U.S. had with the Philippines, where they were recruiting Filipino men to serve in the Navy. This is the only country they did that with, but it really speaks to the special relationship between the U.S. and the Philippines.
Yeah.
And so my uncle joined the U.S. Navy also from the Philippines. At the time, though, they were limited in terms of what they could do. So they were essentially houseboys for the naval officers, right? Getting them their food and taking care of those kinds of things. But he too, he had joined also later in life, but again, wanted a shot at the American dream. And so that is just such an ingrained part of my story. And knowing that I have cousins whose life trajectory is fundamentally different, not because they're not because I'm smarter, not because I am working harder, but only because I was born here, only because my sister and I were lucky to be born here. So I think about growing up on the far west side of San Antonio, Adams Hill, Pease Middle School, John Jay High School. Very proud of where I came from, and that has shaped me in a number of ways. So I look forward to making sure that the opportunities that allowed me to grow up healthy, get an education, and serve our country are there for the next generation.
Yeah. So the military route, is that something you've always wanted to do growing up?
To be honest with you, I've always liked structure and organization, and we come from a military family. My uncle, my father, who was not in my life, actually was a Marine, and would come to find out that he suffered from what we all know now to have been PTSD. Right. He at the time they didn't understand or think about that, nor did they certainly support those folks coming back. So he, unfortunately, was just would not have been a good influence in our lives. I'll just leave it at that. And my mom made the very courageous decision to raise us by herself. Right. But we were always reminded how lucky we were, right? Yeah. That this was a special country we had to give back. And so I think also growing up in San Antonio, I went to John Jay High School. I would right down the road from where everybody who enlists through the Air Force, you go through, right? Lackland Air Force Base. So that community itself has a lot of veterans in it. Right. And then when I was at John Jay High School, that was the largest Air Force junior ROTC program in the country. I see. And so it was very much the identity of the school, right? There were more people I think there were more people in my ROTC program at the time when I graduated than there were in my high school class. And so it speaks to how robust that program is. And I actually did that program. Let me back up though, why I did that program. So I was at Pease Middle School, and my mom was, she was working on her certification because she really wanted to get back to teaching, and she was not able to find something here in San Antonio. So for several of those, I think it was like 1 or 2 years, for several of those years, she would leave very early Monday morning. She would drive down to Laredo, where she would teach there during the week. My sister and I were in middle school at the time, and so then we would see her on Friday afternoon when she'd come back. Yeah, and so she really wanted to teach. That's where the opportunity was. Right. And honestly, like my sister and I, we took care of ourselves. But we knew my mom was working hard. We knew what we needed to do. But I think when you're at that young age, you're not, you want attention. And so I was getting straight A's, nice. But I was getting straight U's in conduct because I was acting out, right? Not surprisingly when you're like a young teenager. Sure. And so I was involved in an altercation with another student, and I'll fast forward this story, but I was placed on probation for 6 months. And
no way.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have believed that.
Yeah. Had to go to the court, right. Look at the judge. And I just remember looking at my mom's eyes, and she was very disappointed. And
Yeah.
I just knew I wanted something different.
Yeah.
And I knew I could do different. Obviously, I was making straight A's.
Yeah.
I was just being
Right.
I was made a knucklehead. So that summer, I'm like, well, what do the good kids do? And this is how I'm going to date myself for those that are listening. I was like, what do the good kids do? And I just remember watching like Saved by the Bell, and I was like, oh, those folks, these are like student council or whatever.
Yeah.
So I got to. It was literally a summer. I wasn't even a student yet at J, but at the student council was already kind of recruiting from the middle school for folks that were going to be freshmen, and fresh persons. And I just started going during the summer. I really liked it, and I liked the service of it. I liked the leadership. I liked public speaking, and I liked that I was getting praised for being a good person, right, and doing things. And I was, effective at organizing and leading people, and I liked it.
Yeah.
So I was in student council all 4 years. I was the president. I would also serve as the Air Force Junior ROTC cadet commander, though, the highest cadet over that. And so that, I think, that introduction to the military in that way, plus the fact that I earned an Air Force ROTC scholarship, put me on a path. Like I knew I was going to serve. I didn't know what it was going to look like, but like I was raised by a single mom, not leaving money on the table, right?
Yeah.
And so when they say we'll pay for your school,
Why not?
I took them up on it. Yeah. And so, but I'll be honest, one of the things that I had to do when I got to Boston University, very first thing, even before my first class, I had to sign a piece of paper that said I will not engage in homosexual behavior, because don't ask, don't tell was the policy at the time. Right. And so I knew what that meant. Like, right, my opportunity to get an education, my opportunity to serve our country, my opportunity to die for our country. If they knew I was gay, all of that goes away, right? And so I wanted to serve. I was honored to serve, but I was also, it is having had the experience of being in an organization that could not be as committed to your success as the person right next to you, even though you're taking the same oath to the Constitution, that fundamentally shaped me as a person, and certainly then how I thought of how I wanted to lead when I had the opportunity to do so. And I know we'll talk about all the things in between, but I thought about that experience every day when I was at the Pentagon, and walking through those halls, and frankly the charge to myself to be the undersecretary that I wish I would have had when I was that young cadet, right? Anybody ready and willing to serve their country should have the opportunity to do so. And I think in our own community, and how I think about serving as mayor, anybody willing to work hard should have the opportunity to raise their kids in a community that is safe, right? They've got access to information to make good decisions, earn a good living wage, right? Afford a house, do the things that all contribute to people living the American dream in whatever that way that looks for them. And so I think nationals, though my background has really been in national security, I know that national security starts at home, and I look forward to leading on those things, because there's no time to waste.
There is no time to waste. So let me go back when you said that when you went to Boston University. I remember reading from your profile that you came out when you were 15. So was that to your mom? Yeah. So how can you tell us what that experience was? Because I grew up in a conservative family as well. I grew up Filipino. I actually didn't come out to my mom till I was in my 20s, and I was so scared to tell her. I actually had to tell her over Facebook Messenger. I already
You're like, oh my gosh, is that a red message? What's going on?
I already moved to the U.S. She was still in the Philippines at the time, and I had to just tell her, because I started being more active about my social life. So what was that like? You were really young when you had to come out to your mom.
Well, I remember how it happened as well. So we were in the living room, and she was looking through a magazine, and or a newspaper, something where it was like this, right? And so she was on the couch, and I'm on the other couch, and I'm just like, I'm just gonna tell her. I was like, Mom, I think I like girls. And my mom didn't miss a beat. She was reading the newspaper, looking at the newspaper. She was like, I think you just like the clothes that they're wearing. and that was it.
Yeah.
Right. Like that. And I knew what that meant, right?
Right.
This is not a conversation we were going to have.
Yes.
I was also raised in the church, the Catholic church, the same church that I go to now, actually, Santo Niño, on the east side.
Yeah.
And as you know, there's not a lot of separation between being Filipino and being Catholic.
Yes.
Right? Those are kind of one and the same.
They go hand
many,
in hand.
Yeah.
Like rice and adobo.
That's right. That's right. For many people. And so, but I would come to find, my mom loves me now. Obviously my mom is my number one supporter, and my mom is the best, truly the best. Could not do anything that I've ever done without her love and support, right? We are very, very tight. All three of us, me, my mom, and my sister. But I knew what she was trying to do now, right? When you look back on those things, you're like,
protecting you.
She's mom. I mean, you have a Filipino mom. They're very protective, right? And so I think she just didn't want my life to be hard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like she had had a hard life in a different way, and I think was just trying to think of like,
is this the path? Yeah.
Is this the path?
Yeah.
That's
that you
right.
Want to do.
That's right. Like, I mean, again, it wasn't 2025.
Yes.
Right. Like it was, what was that? 1997. So a very different time. But I do think about that though. And certainly I think about, young people, and what they themselves are making of what's going on now.
Yeah.
Right. And we have come so far.
Yeah.
And to see some of that progress be attacked.
Yeah.
At the highest levels is really, it's disappointing, it's discouraging, but it's a fucking call to action too.
Yeah.
Right? Like they are, nothing's going to be given to us. We have, we have fought and scraped and shown ourselves to be worthy, time and time again. And that's also the moment in time that we're in, unfortunately. So, I think we need leaders though that think that everybody in the community is worthy of being served, worthy of being protected, right? And we just don't. We've got to step up, and I think good leaders recognize that, and I look forward to being that good leader for San Antonio.
Yeah. So, what brought you to this moment in time where you want to run for mayor? I know you've had so many other political aspirations. What brought you to this moment?
Yeah, I've always been very excited about local. And, local is where you can do things and get things done. Yeah. Right? Local is also, I think, if you like solving problems, if you like doing things, it's local where those things happen. Everything from, frankly, climate change related things that affect not only the long-term strength of the community, but also things today, right? So I'm very excited about bringing my leadership, my service, in service to our community. I have the experience managing a large budget as the Undersecretary of the Air Force, the number 2 person over the Air Force and the Space Force. I managed a $170 billion budget, right? 600,000 folks is what I was responsible for.
That's crazy.
And so when you think about, what leadership is fundamentally about, though, it's about setting priorities and getting things done for folks. As the Undersecretary, my job was really to ask 2 questions every single day. Do my folks have what they need to be successful? And are we making smart investments? That is always what it was about, right? And you've got the experts underneath you to help you make sure that you're asking the right questions and making the right decisions and whatnot, and being good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars. But I think those 2 questions are fundamentally also what a mayor has to ask as they are leading the council, right? Trying to get to those 6 votes to move the city forward. Which is one, are we doing the things that are helping our folks be successful, and are we making smart investments? And I think it's also really important, given this moment in time with all the noise around us, that we have a plan, right? It's not, we don't need word salad. We need a plan. We need a plan, because we know the things that are challenges continually in our community. We know it's housing affordability. We know it's childcare, pre-K for SA, right? We also know it's kind of just basic transparency. Last night I was actually at a neighborhood association meeting, and it's interesting, spending time with neighbors all throughout the city. Last night was in the King William district. The night before, earlier in the week, it was Ingram Hills. which is a little bit closer to the kind of community that I grew up in, to be honest with you. And to see kind of what is top of mind for them, right? Everything from the timeliness and quality of public works projects to, no kidding, what the hell is going on with that $3 billion investment downtown, and why don't we know more about it? Right? I mean, real simple. Real simple, because I think folks recognize we've got some real pressing needs in the community. And so people want to understand fairly how elected leaders are making decisions, what data they're looking at that shows that one investment makes more sense than another. And so, I encourage folks to go to my website, GinaOrtizJones.com. I've got my priority areas. Six priority areas, 14 action items, right? These are the things that I would focus on the first 100 days. Are we going to solve everything in 100 days? No. But I think these are the key actions, the key questions we need answers to that help us put us on a path to making smarter decisions. For example, housing affordability, right?
It's rising. Everyone's moving here.
Everyone also knows, for the homeowners, on the 31st of January, we all wrote that check, right, for our property taxes. It's like, oof. Right? And you're just like, man, I hope they're spending this the right way. But we don't have to hope. We can know, right? And good leaders can help us do that. And but housing affordability is a big issue, and something I hear consistently about. Now it looks a little bit different based on the community that I'm talking to. For one community, it is my property taxes are too high, and there are lots of folks in my community that are getting priced out of this neighborhood because they can't afford the property tax. The home has already been paid for, right? It's the property tax that is a challenge. For others, it is, I want to buy a home. I cannot afford a home in a community that I want to live in, right? And then those folks that are maybe struggling a little bit, I can't afford a place, I can't find a place affordable to rent, right? And so we've got the whole spectrum in our community. And so to tackle some of that, in each part of my plan addresses some piece of that, right? So to this idea of I can't afford a home, right, for young folks, I'm guessing like you and Shelley, that maybe or maybe
not that young, actually.
This is when being Asian helps, right?
You don't look like it.
No, but I think it's really important that when we say we're trying to bring down the costs of housing and so forth, we're trying to help people that is aggressive and that is data driven. One of the things that we know is happening throughout the country is you've got private equity firms that have come into communities, really in the Southwest as well, that have come in, have bought homes at a certain price point. And all that they want to do is really rent those out at the highest rent possible, right? They're not super invested in preventative care. They're not super invested in maintenance. It's all about kind of, as much cash out of it as possible. But what they do, though, when you buy too much within a community is that means, and we're not building homes at that price point in certain areas in the way that people would want. That means if they've got too much control over the supply, they're keeping the rents higher than they maybe really should be because they've got such control of the supply. But also these homes that teachers, nurses, young couples would traditionally buy as their first home, they can't buy them anymore because private equity has bought them and now they're just renting them out. That's really important in our community, though, because we talk always about how San Antonio is growing, but we still have high rates of poverty. Right. We still have many folks that are really just kind of on the fringes, just getting by. Right. And so we've got to understand, well, why is that in our community? Right. What role is the market, the private equity concentration? What does it mean for us? So in the first 100 days, I want to know, hey, what percentage of our markets, our supply of the rental housing is owned by private equity? Because what you've seen in other communities that understand how this is playing out and it's affecting people's ability to generate wealth at the end of the day, they have put a cap, right, on how much those folks can own. So the pro-competitive policies, again, right, we want to help people in our community generate wealth so they can pay those property taxes, so they can also, just do things that have not traditionally been so hard in our country, but outside forces, they have made that harder. But I think we've got to have the data, and to make good decisions with that, in concert, obviously, with the other city council members. I think we've also got to prioritize housing for working families, and as we also think about some of the other needs in our community, right? So I think projects that are 70 to 100% affordable, right, that co-locate childcare, that also help us meet our transit-oriented objectives, right? We need to streamline those. That tells people, again, when they say this is a problem, we have to say what we're doing to address that problem. And if we can streamline some of that, then let's do it. Now, obviously, we still have to abide by the law and work in concert with communities so that, this is the right fit for the community. But again, we've got to, it's incumbent on us, I think, to also ensure that the market developers know what we're interested in and what our willingness to incentivize to increase the supply, right, to meet the needs that we have in our community.
Yeah,
I think it's also really important that we've got we're helping our our frontline workers buy a home, right? I think councilman, out of District 2, he's got a great idea. This idea to help teachers buy a home. I would want to expand that. I think we can include childcare workers. I think we include firefighters, police. So that folks can purchase that home in the city limits, right? So those are just a number of things on the housing piece. I hear a lot about pre-K for essay.
Yeah.
And that's, it's interesting. I just had a conversation earlier today with, he's actually the author of a significant violent street crime reduction plan here in San Antonio. I read about it's a great article in the San Antonio Express News about how violent crime is down, and he's the author of that plan. And so I wanted to hear it straight from the horse's mouth, but also, what's the context? Because there are other pieces of that are important. And it's interesting. I was asking some questions about some data, because we know if we don't invest in things on the front end, we will pay on the back end. We will pay. Always. That'll look like, frankly, learning disabilities going unaddressed, that person not doing well in school, that person then engaging in conduct or behavior that is not good to them or to the community. Yeah. Or, that could even look like, look, you either pay, I would argue we wouldn't need so much ready to work if we had more pre-K for essay, right? Like, we are going to pay. So let's think about, where do we have the highest rate of return on our investment? And we always know it's in the young kids. Right. So I would, in the first 100 days, let's understand what is the true gap in what we are providing versus what the community needs. You can look at the wait list, but I've talked to people that said, I'm not even going to get on the wait list because I know I'm never going to get off. Yeah. Right. So, like, let's understand what the true wait list, the length of that, and what is the true demand? How much would it cost to do that? Right. And now, as a community, we can have a discussion of, hey, do we want to invest X number of dollars in making sure every kid in this city has access to pre-K for essay? Or do we want to go subsidize that direct flight to Frankfurt, which apparently no one took because that was done in 6 months. Yeah. Right. Look, I've been to Frankfurt. There was a couple times to be there during the year, right? It's called Oktoberfest. Other than that, right. I don't know if we need a direct flight. But anyways, it is what it is. But my point is, we have needs in the community. Yeah. Data will help make good decisions. And smart investments, right? And again, as we're also thinking about what the future of downtown looks like, that's another place where we can look at, do we invest? And it's but there's a right mix of these things. But I think as much data as possible in light of the needs in our community will help us make good decisions. Yeah. I think transparency is also really important.
I did see that on your website, that you wanted to be tracked of what's going on. I think that's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Well, I think, it's come up a lot in the context of what's happening downtown. Sure. To be honest, as people raise it to me. Because it seems like it's been going on for a while and we're now just hearing about it. But you would think with the price tag that large, that the community would have been brought in much, much sooner. And when you read that some of the city council folks are finding out about some of these things at the same time we are, that's concerning, right? And so I think it's important. I worked in the intelligence community. I know you've got to protect information, but you've also got to make sure the decision makers have access to it when they need it. Yeah. And keeping people's elected representatives informed is critical, right? It's critical. That's who you work for. And so one of the things I would want to do in that first 100 days is, hey, let's relook this non-disclosure agreement policy. Let's make sure that we are able to do city business. But let's also make sure that we are keeping elected representatives, aka the people's representatives, informed. Yeah. Right, because that's who we're ultimately all accountable to. Because transparency leads to accountability. Accountability leads to trust. Right, that's what this is about. Yeah. I think as important as what you focus on though, and what you want to do, is how you do it. And so the other piece of this accountability piece is every month I commit to having an in-person town hall right? One time it'll be in D2, one time it'll be in D5, one time it'll be in D3. But that's an opportunity to look people in the face, look them eye to eye, right? Give them an update on what's going on. And then hear their questions, and hear from them how things are working. There's always, as you know, you're in comms, right? Sometimes there's a difference between what you say and what people hear.
Sure.
And providing that feedback or giving them that feedback, that access to you, I think is really important. So I commit to that. I also commit to a written update every month that'll be shared widely on the website that just gives folks an update qualitatively and quantitatively on how those 14 action items are going. Right? First 100 days, I think we can do, there's things we can do. Like, no one is coming to save us. There's going to be a lot of things around it that distract us. But if we are committed, right, to kind of the values of this plan and working toward it, then I think we'll be on the right track.
Yeah. Yeah. Can we talk about a little bit about your time, serving as an undersecretary? What were what were you most proud of in your time there?
What was I most proud of? I'll be honest with you. Every morning, I would get dropped off in the front. I had a nice parking spot in the back, but I did not use it. I was dropped off in the morning at the front, so I walked all to the office each day, and that was like a good 10-minute walk, right, from the front to when you get to the office. And I just kind of I had to pinch myself every single day, but that time was also a reminder, like, okay, you're going to be the undersecretary that you wish you would have had when you were that young cadet at Boston University having to sign that bullshit piece of paper. You're going to be that undersecretary that your uncle wishes he had. Right. Not doing these tasks that that was the job, but he was obviously much more capable. He would go on to actually be an electrical engineer when they opened up those
awesome.
jobs to folks. Yeah. And so I just, I know I enjoyed that job very, very much. I would beat my alarm every day. That's when you like your job. You love your job.
You wake up even before
the alarm, right?
Yeah.
And I every single day knew that I did all that I could do to make things better for our airmen and for our guardians. Because I knew, often if I didn't say it, it wasn't going to get said. In part because my lived experience had not been in the room or had not had the seat at the table that I now had the privilege of having. Right. I was the first woman of color to serve as the undersecretary of any of the military departments, the first out lesbian. Right. And so that was important. Because that meant that I knew some of the rooms that I was in, my own office, some of the things that I was saying were probably the first time it had ever been said. Yeah.
Have you always been this brave? Because, I mean, the things that you were working on, like the DEI, all those initiatives that you wanted to do, like pregnant women, being able to elect and, because, they can't just fly, right, at the moment. Yeah. So what makes you really that brave? I mean, it's such a badass. It's really inspiring. Like, what makes you want to just do it and not care about the consequences? Because you never know, right?
My mom raised me and my sister by herself, and so my example has always been a strong woman that is never afraid to say that's not right. My mom has this really wonderful story where I think it's wonderful. She gets annoyed every time she has to tell it because it was a thing. But my mom was a cleaning lady at a hotel. And she was knocking on someone's door because they didn't put out their do not disturb thing. And she was knocking on the door saying, hey, do you need service today? And he was yelling at her. Someone didn't answer, I think. And so she knocked again, and then they yelled and was very rude in how they responded to her, right? And it bothered her. And so when they left and she came back and serviced the room, she wrote a note. And she was like, the only difference between you and me is you have money. You're not better than me. And that's my mom. I'm like, who are you? I went to UP Dillamon. Like, who are you? Right. Yeah. And so, my mom, she just instilled in us, no one is better than you. If you're willing to work hard, you're not better than anybody, but no one is better than, for sure, no one is better than you. Right. And so she just showed us what a strong woman looks like. Somebody that is that knows who they are, comes prepared, and knows that somebody, I know that somebody came before me. right? Somebody came before me, helped pave the way. And so I think it's really incumbent on us to be able to knock down some of those barriers for others. Some of the things I'm most proud of, though, and how you do that, right, is really important, because certainly not everybody is on board with those things, as unfortunately we are finding out, right? But yeah, I'm proud of, because the tagline of "There is no time to waste," those are actually the last 6 words of the most recent national security strategy. And really what that does is lay out kind of how the country views its challenges and opportunities as it relates to U.S. national security. And so, yeah, there's no time to waste. So if there's no time to waste, that means there's also no talent to waste, right? Because that's always going to be our number one resource as a country, as a community, as our people. And so, one of the things, for example, I asked about, and, credit to the team that was there before us, but they were looking at, some of the inequities, who gets promoted, who goes to certain schools, who has certain assignments. And they were briefing us the results out, and it was one by gender, so just men and women, and then by race and ethnicity. And they didn't do the 2, so you couldn't, for example, look at women of color. And as a woman of color, I was like, well, why didn't you look at that? And they said, we didn't think about that. And I just thought that was really indicative of kind of just some of the blinders that people naturally have that were quite senior. And I just thought, look, no organization on this planet would write off 10% of the talent, right? Because 10% of the Department of the Air Force is women of color. Yeah. You would never not try to understand, the unique challenges of this community. And so when I think about my time as if I were to be, honored to serve as the mayor of San Antonio, I would similarly have people around me that are asking those kinds of questions, constantly challenging, right, assumptions. And certainly my time serving under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, I'm always going to be and have been cognizant of, okay, who am I not hearing from and why, right? And why. I tell people, I spend 90% of my day at the Pentagon asking 3 questions. Why? Why not? And where's the data? Yeah. Where is the data, right? If you don't have the data, then you're not serious about whatever it is you're talking about, right? So anecdotes are important, understood. Sure. Yeah. But the data has to really be quite clear about why we're doing things, because you got to be able to explain to people, right? If you're denying somebody an opportunity, or if you're making an investment that doesn't make sense to people, you've got to have the data that it helps to explain why you're doing things. Yeah. So, yes, everything from the policy around when women could fly when they were pregnant. And that was really important. Not only, I guess also because I come from Military City, USA, right? And so we know the number one indicator of whether somebody will serve is if they know somebody who has served. And so in our community, where you've got 5% active duty, 11% veterans, like that's an experience that really is important. And it's our community communities like ours that disproportionately send people to go serve. And so, one of the things I see every Sunday before on my way to Santo Niño, is a mural of Vanessa Gann right outside Fort Sam. And I think of that when I hear the things about what they're doing and what the programs they want to do away with and all those other things, I know that, our community disproportionately sends people to serve, and those folks are people of color. And so these programs that make it harder for them to have a fair shot, harder for them to really have the best quality of service, quality of life, all of that actually affects our ability to have the strongest military possible. I don't care what anybody says. The data is very, very clear about the importance of diverse teams, right? And so it's an operational impact. It's a readiness issue. You've got to have people who understand different perspectives, looking at a problem and coming up with the best solutions. Number of, different backgrounds will help you do that in the best possible way. Yeah. Right. So that's also how I think about some of the challenges that we have as a city. We can't be, super focused on it's just this or it's just that. No, many of these things are interrelated,
Yes,
right?
they are.
Housing
Right.
affordability, childcare, pre-K for SA, mass transit,
Yeah.
the digital divide. But even as we're making investments as a community, let's make sure that we are hyper focused as well on those communities that have been traditionally underinvested in, right? I went to John Jay High School, but my mom taught at Harlandale High School for 25 years. 2 years at McCollum, 25 years at Harlandale High School. And so I feel like I know that community pretty well as well, just based on her stories.
Yeah.
But when you go further down south, it's exciting to see all the development that's happening there. A lot of that driven by manufacturing, and certainly what's happening at Brooks. And now we've got to keep up with the infrastructure needs, right? And being pretty aggressive as well about how we can think about, Stimson Airport down there. What more could we do there to really make sure we're getting the most juice for the squeeze, right? As well as thinking about, I don't know if folks realize this, but San Antonio area is the 21st largest exporter of a manufacturing exporter, right, region of the country, right, 21st. So, look, as mayor, I would want to work with partners and say, okay, over the next several years, how do we go to 17? How do we go to 14?
Yeah.
How do we, right? You've got to have a clear idea of where you're going, which is then going to drive everything else.
Yeah.
It drive your engagement, your international engagement, your local engagement, your national engagement. Because ultimately, we want to keep moving forward, right? We've got to keep moving forward, and I think that takes strong leadership.
Yeah, it does. Gosh, I mean, I know no time to waste, so there's so much more that we wanted to cover. But I wanted to go back the time when you were in the military and under the do not, don't ask, don't tell. How did you really manage that? Like, how do you kept that side of you so far from coming out?
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's hard now when you look at it because you're looking at it from this life, right? Versus like when you're a 18-year-old or 21-year-old in Iraq, right? I mean, unfortunately, you just kind of adapt. But as I've talked to others that have served under that, we all kind of have this same kind of regret in that because of that, you were not able to form these bonds with your fellow service members that the military is traditionally known for, right? Now, certainly, I've got good friends from when I served, but because you always had to play the pronoun game, right, or talk around what you did over the weekend, right, or talk around your interest in somebody, like you couldn't be your full self, so you were then. That prevented you from again forming those close bonds. So I think it's unfortunate that was the policy. It's unfortunate that there are people that think we should go back to that. Right? Let's be very clear about where some folks want to take us back to.
True.
And I would argue, look, if we already are having a recruiting crisis, which we are, we need the best and brightest, right? And focus on who you love. They'll focus on who they love. And oh, by the way, can we just focus on making sure that we're ready to do what we need to do as a country? There truly are some larger issues that we need to be focused on, and these distractions, I think, detract from our ability to be the strongest we can be.
Yeah. And then when you were finally able to come out and live your full self, like what was the difference? I mean, I'm sure crazy, right? But like, how did it feel like being able to finally be your full self and embracing it?
Yeah. I mean, I think, look, I think it's a relief. I don't know. I mean, I think everyone's story is different. For me, it wasn't like one day to the next. It's kind of because and look, I also present the way that I do, right? Which I know for folks. For some folks, I still have to come out, right?
Yeah.
If they haven't like looked me up or whatever. So I get that. And I just I think I was just I am thankful, but I think also. For those of us, we know that time wasn't that long ago. So it's really incumbent on us to be out and talk about the experiences that you and I just talked about, because our LGBTQ community is diverse, is vibrant, is as much a part of this community as any other. That means our community is as deserving of good leadership as anyone else. So that's how I see it. Yeah. I'm sure everyone would have their own different kind of story about what that looks like.
Yeah.
But mine was just real, I think just thankful.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So, two questions. So, one is, if is there anything that you would want our listeners to know about you? That obviously during your meet and greet, sometimes some of the questions about the policies and whatnot, that's what comes up. But if there's anything that you want to leave and part with the listeners, what would that be?
Look, I mean, I think we're seeing every single day that leadership matters. Elections matter, right? Yeah. This election, May 3rd, this is the 7th largest city in the country. Yeah. 1.5 million people, right? We can do a lot for our community, but it's going to take strong leadership. And I don't think anybody should discount, again, what our community is possible can achieve together with the right leadership. But folks need to vote, right? Folks need to vote. May 3rd, right? That's in, depending on when this airs, and that's in like 88 days, right? So make sure you're registered. Make sure you've got somebody that is going to be your voice, not sell you out. Let's be clear about that, right? Yeah. Not sell you out. Right. And they'll say something to you, but may not necessarily be as aligned. Follow through. That's right. Be as aligned with your values. So make sure, and not just on LGBTQ stuff, but where are they on? Where are they on transparency? Right? Where have they been on transparency? What have they been doing? Yeah. I think those are all really fair questions to ask. Looking at people's record of getting things done, standing up for things that matter in our community. Yeah. I am very thankful to be able to call myself a San Antonio and call San Antonio my home. And I would be very honored to help lead our city forward. We'll be happy if that happens. So everybody that's listening, I hope that you do what Gina's saying. Do your research. Definitely vote. Okay, and then the final question, since you're at the Taco Stand podcast. Yeah, that's right. Yes. So if you're a taco, what kind of taco would you be? What kind of taco? Yeah. So I misread that question because I thought it would be like, what is my favorite taco? No, it's not the favorite. What if I was a taco? Which kind of taco would I be? Yeah. Like for me, like when people ask me that question, I say I'm a street taco, just because like I'm small. And tiny. I see. Yeah. Huh. I just can't get away from the kind of taco I would kind of like want to have right now, which is I like a tripa taco, to be honest with you. Yeah, tripa taco with guac, with hot sauce, the green sauce, and sometimes corn, mainly the corn tortilla, sometimes the flour, but I love a good tripa taco. Yeah? Yeah. Jalisco and Petranco and Ellison, if y'all haven't been, y'all need to go. That's where I normally have them with my mom. Yeah. But yeah, that's what I like. Awesome. Well, thank you, Gina. It's been an honor. It's been a pleasure. It was great to get to know you in personal and political level. We're excited to see what happens. And in the meantime, I hope that you stop by again one of these days and, maybe talk more about anything you want to talk about. Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. The Taco Stand podcast is proudly brought to you by Just As Lesbians, a meetup group based in San Antonio, Texas. Find us and hope to see you in our next event.